It's fuel bag time. So we're doing a Rebel Classic build and we've got a fuel bag here, a 3-liter fuel bag. Now we're not doing a how-to on the build of the aircraft, but we are doing a how-to on installing a fuel bag into this aircraft. All right, now I am by no means an expert in doing this, but I'm just sharing with you guys my experience of installing this fuel bladder or fuel containment device, as I prefer to call it, because it's not a IV tank, it's not a plastic bag, it's a fuel containment device into the Rebel Classic. So I have done a couple of these already. You guys have not seen them on the video, but this is the first time putting one of these in a Rebel Classic. So let's go over the items that we need to put this bag into this plane. Now this plane, this is one of the first things we need to do in this build of this plane because we're painting the inside of the fuselage and we need to have all of our mounts done before we do the rest of the work. So let's take a look at our stuff. All right, so this fuel containment device came from Jordan Factor. He's one of the CARF pilots, and it is a 3-liter bladder. Nicely shaped compared to the stock fuel system here. You'll see that it's quite a bit shorter. It's a little bit bigger in diameter, but the CARF Rebel Classic does have a little bit of extra room in this area to allow that to fit. So obviously the first thing we need is a fuel containment device, which we have. Now when you look at these things, you can order them a couple different ways. I'm just going to specifically talk about this bag. You can get them with both of the pickup and the fill line on top, which isn't ideal for this aircraft. And you can get them with the fill port installed on the top and the pickup installed on the front face, which is ideal for a Rebel. Next thing you need is some carbon rods that are appropriately sized. So in this case, this bag, I've got 2 different size carbon rods. So in this case, the 8mm fits very nicely. I also ordered some 10mm carbon rod. Some of the larger size bags I find needs the 10mm, but the 8mm fits perfectly in the holders here that are designed to hold the carbon rods. Now these carbon rods need somewhere to mount in the fuselage, and that is where some mounts come in. So what I've done to this point is taken some random cardboard here and made my mounts. Now these mounts, I took this piece and I transferred onto a piece of ply, which is this guy here. So this is aircraft ply, looks like 3/8 of an inch, I think, something like that. It's pretty thick. The reason I went thicker is so we have nice gluing surface on there. And I've cut these out on my bandsaw, and we're gonna take this to the sander and get it shaped perfectly. Now these are the 2 front mounts for the front of the rod, so in the front portion of the fuselage, and these little half circles are for sitting on top of the wing tube. So we've got 4 mounts here to mount our carbon rods to. Now the other thing I've done is gone online and found a file for some clamps here. This is, I can't remember what they're called, but this is on Thingiverse, I believe. I did have to adjust the clamp a little bit to fit the 8mm carbon rod, but this fits perfectly. I would rather have something that clamps around the rod versus, in this case, our 3mm bolt actually pushes against the carbon rod, but I don't think you need to go that tight where it really makes that much of a difference. But I'll show you one of the important things with the sizing on those little clamps. So we'll just get our rod installed here first. So in this case, that 8mm fits in there great. I don't even think a 10mm would fit in there. And if your clamp is too big, what's going to happen is when you put this on, it's going to be bunching up in this area. So if we had a clamp that had like twice the amount of material around there, it might be an issue in this spot right here, but these small little clamps are perfect. So you basically need 8 of these clamps. And what you need these clamps for is if this is the back, well, this is the back of our tank. This is going to be sitting on the wing tube right there. So you need to have a clamp on the tube, holding the tube in place from going forward and backwards. And then I think you also want to have a set of clamps on the bag itself like this. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And that is going to hold the bag or the fuel containment device in the appropriate location so it doesn't move forward and aft. So one of the critical things with using a bladder type setup is you don't want this to be contacting anything. That's pretty much the most important thing, I would say. The other thing is when you're filling this, you basically want to have access to this port. So on the case of the Rebel, right above this tank, there's a plate there. That's part of the fuselage, the top deck. So I'm probably going to put a through fitting right on the top of that plate, and that allows us to have access to our filler and be able to take this, pull it up, and suck any of the air out at the very end of filling this unit. Now these units are very durable. You can't really overfill them. That's one of the misconceptions I had when I first saw this or heard about fuel bladders, was I thought, well, if I'm putting fuel into a Ziploc bag, the bag can expand. These are all double walled. They're very sturdy. You can see there it's full of air right now, but it pretty much holds its shape very well. When it's in the plane, it doesn't jostle around, doesn't jiggle around. So great solution so far from what I've seen. When I was at Joe Nall, seeing the bladders or the fuel containment devices like this in so many different aircraft and watching them get filled, it is absolutely, I think, a game changer. I was really impressed. I was very skeptical before I saw them in person, so seeing this, I think, has won me over. This is awesome. So our next step here is to get our mounts shaped. We're gonna get our hole drilled in the appropriate location for these guys, but first thing we have to do is get these guys shaped so we can get them installed on the fuselage in the right spot. All right, so there's a shot of the bladder sitting inside the fuselage. It's a really nice fit in there. It's got space all the way around it. Obviously right now it's resting on the bottom of the fuselage, but we've got lots of room here to go up and still not be in contact with anything. Now these bladders, from my experience, they don't sag as well. So if you run that fuel containment device, you know, 3/4 of an inch off the base of the fuselage, it's gonna stay at 3/4 of an inch off the base of the fuselage, whether it's got fuel in it or air like it is. So very nice units. And then at the back here, we've got a little bit of space in between here and the unit. So if we put our half moon or half circles on here, that gives us an idea of where to drill our holes. So these mounts are going to be pretty much perfect. So on our ones that mount on the wing tube, we're basically going right in the center of these guys. On these fuselage mounts, we're doing kind of the same thing. We're going right in the center, right about here, right across from the little poke out thing. And that looks like it's going to bring us right into the right spot. So very good. So we'll drill some 8mm holes next and see how those fit. All right, so we've got the half circles here clamped in place, just drilled an 8mm hole, and I think last time I did this I used 8.5, but anyways, we'll see how the 8mm rods fit into those holes first before we unclamp either of those guys. All right, so we got our bladder back out, and yeah, it fits. It probably could jam it through there, but we want it to be a reasonably good, easy fit. So we'll go up to our next size, which is 8.5 millimeters. All right, and that one fits very nice. So we've got our front mounts here just installed, and we will put the bladder back in. Nice. And I'm just going to put our half circles on this back side, see how they fit. So essentially what I'm doing here is just getting everything mocked up, of course, and making sure that our size on everything is appropriate. So I'm just going to tuck the bag back. So I'm going to run the bladder about half an inch back from the wing tube. So sometimes when these bladders collapse, the design here works quite well. It usually folds in, but sometimes that comes out a little bit. So we're going to leave a bit of space there, but that's what we're looking at the back. I don't want to jinx this, but this has actually been crazy easy to get this mounted. Very, very surprising. So yeah, so there's our back end is in place. Our front end looks like it's gonna work. I don't really wanna play with it too much because our back end is lined up perfectly, but if we raise these brackets now up to their little resting points, it's gonna space everything away from the fuselage nicely. So first thing I'm doing is these back ones. I'm just coming behind the fuselage here and looking down the fuselage like that and just making sure that they're centered. So visually my eyes right now are saying the back of that bag is very centered. So what we'll do in this case is we're gonna take a little bit of CA. We're gonna spot glue these guys in place with CA. We're gonna do the same thing on these front ones most likely, but once those back ones are kind of in place, then we can manipulate these front ones and see if it's actually positioned properly. All right, so first step I did here was glue the half circle pieces down. Now I got this centered, glued one down. When I glued the other side, I made sure that it was pushed out as far as possible, so it's creating a nice saddle for the tank to sit in. So now what we'll do is we'll spot glue the front ones in. Now these front ones are getting glued up top, right? So this piece for the old tank mounting, that's gonna be coming out as well. We may be able to use that as a plate for mounting equipment, so we'll take a look at it and see, but our other pieces up here are getting mounted just like that. So again, we'll use some medium CA this time and get those guys glued in. So we'll put a little bit of medium CA on those blocks and then push them over. The actual position right now really doesn't matter. We're just gonna keep the full rod length and everything. And I mean, our keepers for the bag are going back there, and then our keepers for the rod go towards the front on the outside of the brackets. So, all right, so we've got everything spot glued in place here. It looks awesome. There's a ton of room underneath. Try and show you guys that. Lots of room underneath at the front. We've got our brackets glued in nicely. One thing I did once I had all of everything tack glued in place, I was just kind of taking the bladder, moving it up and down, seeing, and we were getting kind of close to the underside. So what I did is I put the wing tube in the phenolic wing tube or receptacle and grabbed this with pliers without the rod installed, popped the CA off and slid it out about a centimeter, 10 millimeters that way, adding more outside to outside force on the mounts here. So that keeps everything nice and tight and spread out. And that's the reason we use CA on a situation like this, is then we can adjust it, get it repositioned, and then we go back afterwards and put high sol around everything. So that is pretty much the next step. I'm happy with how everything's installed. Everything looks good. So we're going to pull this bladder out of this aircraft now, and then we will get the high sol around all of our mounts. So getting the bladder out is actually quite an easy thing. You basically pull the rods. In this case, we have to go backwards because of the angle of the fuselage there. So we'll pull those rods right out. We could leave them in the bag, but that's fine. So we'll pop this forward. And then pull them backwards. So not complicated at all. Getting the bladder out with it filled up like this is actually more tricky than if it was deflated. So, but slides out nicely. So the plane looks a lot different now than when you saw it last. We've done all the equipment installation on this Rebel Classic, but I'll show you what things look like here. So we're doing a bit of a hidden setup, so all of our equipment's around there, but regardless, we're focused on the fuel system here. So we've got our mounts, front mount right there. That's where the carbon rod goes through. And if you look at that side, you can see the carbon rod going through. And then our back mounts are right here. So those back mounts are kind of critical because the front mounts for this 3-liter tank, they tuck in place and you're kind of just gluing those to the side, getting them fixed in place. These back ones, as I talked previously, kind of spread them out as much as possible, and adding a bit of tension to the bag to make sure it doesn't sag too much up and down. So we've added a through fitting up here at the top deck. So the point of the through fitting is to allow us to pull up on this top piece right here. Now, in the previous clip, you saw this bag with just the metal fittings. Now, those metal fittings, you can add Festo. They're a metric fitting, so you can add a Festo fitting, a 6mm fitting on there if you want. I wanted to go a little bit different and put our Festo fitting on the actual tube itself. So what I did is I stretched the 6mm tube over top. You do have to heat it up, stretch it out, safety wired it, and then put some shrink tube over top. Same thing on the front fitting. So we will have a Festo joiner piece on both our pickup line and our, obviously, well, there's going to be a bunch of Festo fittings on our filler line, which is the top here. So that through fitting is sitting about here. So when we fill this tank up, we're able to pull on this top fitting, and we'll demonstrate all this. Pull on this top fitting, suck a little bit of the air out, and then we're good to go. But the key is this fuel containment device is going to sit about there in the fuselage, and you can see how the top fitting and the through fitting are pretty much lined up. So next thing to do is to get this guy in place inside the fuselage. And when we do that, we're going to get our carbon rods all threaded through. And it's a bit of a chore, but it is nice because this bag comes out so nice and easy without having to do anything to that equipment, even the Cortex on the bottom. All right, and to prepare for our installation, I'm getting my little holders ready. These are the holders that fit over top of the carbon rod. Now, I found that when I printed these previously out of PETG carbon fiber, this end didn't really hold up too well. So these are actually printed out of ABS reinforced with fiberglass. So very, very strong material. And I think they should hold up substantially better as well too. So all we do is we take a standard 3mm nut. We get that inserted into the holder right there, like that. We're gonna push that all the way down. And then we use one of our small screws like this. And that is what holds everything in place. And this is all 3mm hardware. All right, so the biggest struggle I've found so far with getting the fuel bladders installed is just feeding the rod through the slots in the bag itself. So you also have to get your little keepers on there. So I will kind of take you guys through this and show you. But these pieces are quite durable as well too. So it's not like, you know, you breathe on it and it's going to fail. So, okay, so we'll feed that through first. And then now we are going to just slowly feed our rods back and get them installed in between our little slots in the bladder. All right, so we got one of them through there, our little keepers in between the bladder and our mount. And now our rod is all the way through on the back side. So we'll just keep sliding that rod through. You can see it there. We'll put our keeper on. And then now our rod can slide through the back mount. So if I wasn't trying to video this, it is a crazy quick process. Very impressed with how quick and easy getting these tanks would be, getting them in and out would be. It's pretty wild. Now we're going to adjust this once we get everything installed in the tank, but the point of this this through fitting and this piece of tubing is when the tank is all the way collapsed, we want there to be enough room in there where this is sitting free floating and it's not restricting the tank from collapsing. And then when the tank fills up, this tube is very likely going to sit quite a bit higher in this slot. So this is going to be a kind of a movable piece in there. So now we'll get our other rod installed in the bladder. All right, so all of our clamps and everything are in place. Now one thing I'll do with these guys is I'll do my outside ones up first. So I do those So they're in this position like that, like facing in the center as an example. And then I'll put my ones that are closest to the bag or right against the bag. And those will be facing sort of up or outwards. And then what I can do is I can take the rods, twist them 90 degrees, and now our bolts are positioned away from the bag. So I've done that on both sides. And then I'll take just a little bit of shoe goop and I'll pop it on our holders here, and that just prevents those guys from twisting in the future. And if you ever need to get that off, not a big deal, you just pop the shoe goop off, but we'll get those installed. Now everything's lined up nicely with this through fitting, that's great. So the bag is actually all the way down at the bottom of the fuselage right now. You can see there, I've pushed it all the way down, so we're getting our most space out of that guy, which is awesome. All right, so what I'll do now is I'm gonna blow into this guy and fill it up, and I'll show you guys what it looks like. So I'm just gonna blow into the fill line, plug off the front one. All right, so I've got quite a bit of pressure in there and it is sitting lovely. So we've got clearance all the way around, which is perfect. Nice. That's wicked. So we've got clearance on the bottom, we've got clearance on the back and up top. That is perfect. So now what I'll do is I'm going to pull, so right now the shrink tube we have on the top piece, that's sitting right in the center of our through fitting. So I'm going to get the air out of this guy. There we go. And I'll take my Sharpie. We're just going to put a little mark right here so we know exactly where it is at. And that now gives us the distance, which is about maybe 2.5 to 3 inches from our tube here to where it sits when it's full of fuel. All right, so we got our feed line hooked up here. This is going to our pump and our 4 or 6 to 6 millimeter Festo fittings right there. We've got nice swooping loops on there, so that is perfect. I'm happy with the spacing on that. And then up top here, we are going to cut this a little bit shorter. I'm just playing around with that, and this is the line we had previous, but because there's so much movement in the bladder system, we're able to cut this a fair bit shorter, so when it's filled up, it's actually only going to stick up just a little bit. And we've put our little catch can down here. That's for our fill fitting. So I'm going to get a 6 millimeter 90 degree Festo fitting. That's going to come through here, go back, and our little catch fitting is going to sit right in there. All right, guys, so we've got our bag wrapped up here. This is simply magical as it's been expressed to me. So we've got our 90 degree fitting. There will be an on-off valve that goes right here. I just don't have any in stock right now in the 6 mil size. Of course, we've got a keeper, our little catch thing, and the filler fitting on the end. So when you fill the fuel containment device up, that's where it happens. So the aircraft's on its legs for the first time, and we're gonna get ready to fill up the fuel containment device. So what I'll do in this case is for the first fill, because we haven't had any fuel in there yet, I'm gonna pull the end off of our filler line here, and I am going to suck the air out just to make sure we don't have to deal with that air once the aircraft has fuel added to it. But once the system is kind of charged and running, it's very straightforward. There we go. So we're going to get our fueler and we are going to put some fuel in this bag. So quite a simple system because these units are completely closed. Obviously there's no vent line, we know that. So as the unit fills, the bag just expands. You know, this is the first one I'm installing on public video. I've installed a few of these already and I am absolutely loving this concept. It is phenomenal. A lot of pluses about it. I like the closed system, which is great. I love being able to use basically your entire fuel volume. It's pretty phenomenal. So as this fills, we're gonna have our fitting come up a little bit through the top of the through fitting. So you can see it coming up a little bit now as the bladder inflates or fills with fuel. All right, so because this is our first fill, we've got a reasonable amount of air on the top of the bag. So I'm going to just suck that air out. So just pull up a little bit on the fitting. All the air is coming to the top of the fuel cell. And there we go. Now it's out. And then now we can put it back in. So because we had a bunch of air in there to begin with, I find that that is pretty much the norm. But then once we've got the system primed like it is and we're running it and everything, it's very straightforward, and you only have to do a little bit of a burp at the end. All right, and there's the fuel cell full of our go-go juice. Now this plane could really conceivably also use a 2.5 liter tank. Like 3 liters is the stock tank. So that's what I found with the installs so far, is you can go a little bit smaller on the fuel size because you're not leaving that reserve. So I know when I fly my Rebel with the standard tank, it's a 3 or 3.5 liter tank, 3 liters I think exactly, and I'm landing like just under 50% fuel. So you're carrying 1.5 liters for landing. You can fly it more, of course, but that's like a standard flight of 7-ish minutes. And in this case, with 3 liters in the fuel cell, I mean, you could fly 10 minutes and still have some reserve probably in there. So, you know, going to like a 2.5 liter on this size wouldn't be a terrible thing as well too on this aircraft. And the mounting that we've done here in this case would fit probably bang on perfectly, because when this bag's full, as you can see in that video clip, it's got a little bit of sag downwards to it, of course, because the weight is in there. But yeah, it looks good. There's clearance around the bottom. I know it looks like it's tight, but we do have clearance around the bottom. There's about 1/2 inch all the way around. There's a bit more on the top side of the clearance end of things. So if you take off and go inverted right away, it still has clearance for all the fuselage bits. So pretty awesome. All right, guys, and I just wanted to throw that run in there so you had some reference as to what the fuel bags actually look like. So you can see there, and based on our screen right here, we've got about 10% fuel left, which is accurate. Very little left in the bag, but it would suck that bag completely dry. Now there was just a couple air bubbles starting to come into the intake line. I was sitting at half throttle, and so that's why I shut it down, because it's basically right at the end there. So in this case, like 10% fuel left in this bag, which is accurate, but you don't want to get much below that. So pretty darn cool setup. I like it. I like it a lot. All right, guys, and that basically wraps up the install of the CARF Rebel fuel cell, and very impressed with this thing. It worked out very well. Excited to hear feedback from the owner on this one. As I've said, I am very much sold on these fuel bags. They, in certain applications, they are outstanding. They're a great solution to not having UATs and just building a lighter aircraft overall. I think a little bit more resilient fuel system as well too. So definitely very interesting. We're gonna put some links down below in the video description, and also the first comment as well too. So, and he's just kind of getting things going. I think he's gonna plan on offering install kits. So if you're building a CARF Rebel as an example, and you wanna put a 3 or 2.5 liter kit in place, pretty sure that he's gonna have all the mounts and everything sorted out. So yeah, so definitely check that out. Links down below. I don't know what they are yet because they don't exist when I recorded this video. So anyways, video description and the first comment. Thanks guys for tuning in. Hopefully you found this informative and interesting. Yeah, that's it. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.